Easter, we started this series called Impossible. And this series is based on the 7 miracles that the Apostle John writes in his gospel. The Apostle John chose to highlight 7 miracles of Jesus in his gospel. There's a reason for it. And we're learning from these miracles. We're drawing lessons from these miracles until Easter Sunday. So Easter Sunday, we're going to share the last miracle. But today, we're in miracle number 4 that John highlights. And so if you're taking notes, this is number 4, the miracle number 4. And, I had a thought based on this miracle as we were talking about it. We live in a country, in a culture that values big things, right? We value things that are big ideas. We value big cars, big roads, big parks, big cities, right? Big buildings. We're told that it's important to have a big personality. A big bank account is helpful, right? Having a big bank account is the goal. Big plans. We're told that we got to work hard for our big break. We're told to dream big, to have our hopes, big hopes, and our meals are even bigger, right? We live in a country with abundance. We value abundance. And when we feel small, we are told to reach for big. When we feel small, we're told big is better. And so, listen, part of the reason why I love America with all my heart, I wasn't born here, but I bleed red, white, and blue, baby, and I love America. I love this idea of big things, the drive that we have for big things. I am a Costco executive member, all right? I like big. You walk into Costco, I remember the first time I walked into Costco, I don't know what it is, but just something within me just rises, and I just want to say, America. You walk into Costco, especially in a season right now where you're getting ready for the barbecue and cleaning up, spring cleanup and all of that. All the nice stuff comes out, right? And you get ready for big things. So I'm not discouraging and rebuking the idea of big. I like big. I am big, right? I'm the tallest person in my entire family. Like, I'm talking everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins, pets, the mailman, everyone. I'm the tallest. Like, this jacket is 44 long. I'm 6'4". I drive an SUV. I understand big. All right? Rare have been the situations and circumstances where I had to look up to someone. I'm either at eye level with Mr. Baltimore right here, or, a little low. That's just the way it is. In fact, it's so rare that whenever I meet someone who's taller than me, I just have to go talk to them. It has happened where I'm in a random store somewhere and somebody walks by, usually a man, and I'm like, I got to talk to this person. It's like, hey, I never get to look up. Can I just chat with you for a little bit? It's a new experience for me. And they laugh because they understand. There's very few things, few moments where I really had to look up. I got to meet Shaquille O'Neal one time. It was a brief thing. I got to walk with him from his car to the event we were doing at our church. And this is a big man. We had to order a special chair for him to sit on because, and then Dikembe Mutombo was part of our church as well. And that was another big fellow. But rare have been the times where I've had to look up. However, not so rare have been the times in life when I have felt small. Now, I'm not talking about confidence or self-esteem. I grew up with a healthy self-esteem. I was loved as a child. My parents were present, and I had a good childhood. I don't have any complaints about that. I'm talking about being overwhelmed. I don't know if you've ever been overwhelmed, maybe by a dream that you have or a vision. It doesn't have to be something negative. It can be something positive. Maybe a challenge or a need that you're trying to fulfill, a calling that is impressed upon you. And that becomes so big that you feel small. I think the part that is difficult in advancing in life, and many times, even if you're looking to advance in your faith, is that we've been trained to reject the idea of smallness. We've been trained to reject what we consider small because the extreme value we apply to big things. Now, we need to relearn how to value smallness. I believe it's an important thing for us to relearn the value of smallness. My wife and I live in a woodsy area here in Stanford with our family. We moved there about 3 years ago. And at night, it gets really dark. And so sometimes, especially on a cool night, when it's bright out and the skies are clear and you can see so many stars, and sometimes I'll just turn off all the outside lights and I'll just look up and stare at the stars. Sometimes I'll have my daughters with me and I say, hey, let's just stay here for a moment and stare at the sky. And I don't know if you've done this. I encourage you to do this. When you stare at the sky long enough, your eyes begin to adjust. And it's almost like more and more stars begin to show up. And you begin to notice more and more stars. And sometimes I just get caught up in how small we are. I look at those stars and I think, those were the same stars Abraham looked at some 4,000 years ago when God called him outside of his tent. The same stars that are out there. And it's easy to understand why the psalmist wrote in Psalm chapter 8, verse 3 and 4. It says, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is a man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? What is a man that you are mindful of him when we look at the stars? See, we get obsessed with big. We are told big is better. Go for big things. And there's nothing wrong with going for big things. But big, the attractiveness about big is that it means I'm in control. It means if I reach big, I have more resources, more access. It means I can have more, do more, experience more. However, I think we're blinded to the fact that sometimes being so attached to big, being so attached to big ambitions can blind us to pride and even blind us to apathy. On the other end, we reject smallness because we think of smallness as failure. We attach smallness to insignificance. And in doing so, many times we fail to see that exercising awareness of how small we are actually is what causes us to realize that we are meant to be part of something much bigger than ourselves. That we are supposed to be a small part of something much bigger. And here's the thing about God doing the impossible in our lives. When you face the impossible, you're going to feel small. That's a characteristic of the impossible. And it's not that the impossible is always something negative that you have to overcome. Sometimes the impossible, it's something great that you want to accomplish. And because the contrast becomes so evident, we immediately step away from it thinking, it's never going to happen. I don't think it's in the cards. I'm too small compared to this task or this vision or this objective. Therefore, it's probably not in the cards. And Jesus' fourth miracle, shared by John, exemplifies how this idea is present in Jesus' ministry. So let's go to John chapter 6. We'll start at verse 1. And I'm reading from the NIV version. There's a few verses here that we're reading. So Read with me. And sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them all and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Phenomenal story, very well known. All 4 Gospels relate this story, and it's a miracle unlike any other. Now let's use our imagination to set the scene here. I'm sure you can place in your mind what's happening in this situation. Some time had passed between the first 3 miracles we highlighted. Some time had already passed. Jesus' ministry now has gained some fame. He is notorious. People know about him. And his fame was growing throughout the region. He was already suffering some persecution. Matthew tells us that John the Baptist, his cousin, had just been executed by Herod. He was decapitated. And so Jesus is distressed. He understands what's happening. And he's looking for some time alone with his disciples. He's going to go away. He just wants to get away for a little bit. And so he finds this place in a desolate area. And he settles on the mountainside, certainly, looking over the plains, trying to find a place serene to be with his disciples. But word traveled fast about where Jesus was. People were tracking him. And even though he crossed the Sea of Galilee to get there, they knew where he was. And when they were sitting on the mountainside, imagine this, a mega church-sized crowd just began to come toward Jesus. It says 5,000 men because they only counted the men back then. How dare they? But so you can imagine at least 15,000 people if you count women and children, which we should. I think we should, right? 15, 20,000 people, maybe more, walking on foot, coming toward Jesus. Now, at some point, as they were there, the question is asked, how are we going to feed all these people? Now, here's a problem that was not even crossing the disciples' minds. Wait a minute, we're supposed to feed them? I thought we were trying to get away. The question alone overwhelmed them. The disciples were caught by surprise that this was now their problem. Have you ever been caught by surprise? By a problem that you thought wasn't yours, but then it all of a sudden became yours, and you're like, there's no way I can solve this. How did this end up on my lap? How am I going to solve this? Philip, who seemed to be the math guy, there's always a math guy, right, doing the numbers. I don't know, if you take the percentage here divided by the coefficient of the superior and the posterior divided by pi. My dad was a math guy. I'm not so much. It would take half a year's wages. In today's money, it's about $7,500 according to ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Which really meant what he was saying, he wasn't trying to tell Jesus, Jesus, can we check the bank? What he was saying is, it's not happening. It's just not happening. We don't have the resources. We don't have the means. We don't have the source of bread. There's no way for somebody to just get a bite, one bite. It's half a year's wages. That's Philip saying, not happening. But the challenge became even more overwhelming when they realized how unprepared the crowd was. Nobody had any food to eat. They scavenged everyone, and all they could find was a boy with 5 small loaves and 2 small fish. Now, I find it significant that Andrew, the disciple who informed Jesus, came to Jesus with this information, but he added the specific descriptions of what was happening. It was a boy, not a man. Small little guy. With 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. I think he was trying to give Jesus a specific message. Jesus, this is not enough. This is just not enough. In other words, again, just like Philip said, it's not happening. Why are you putting this on us? It's not happening. It's not happening. I don't know if you've ever faced a situation where you needed to come up with a solution, and every answer you looked toward got back to you, it's not happening. The answer you got was, it's not happening. The solution, probability, doing the math and calculations, all that you received back was, it's just not happening. Everything was small. But here's the thing about small. If you ever felt small, if you ever faced a situation that made you feel small, small is relative. It really is. The boy's meal was technically not small. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish for a boy, it's adequate. It's a good meal for a boy. The boy would have been fine. It was only considered small because of Jesus' proposition that the whole crowd needed to eat. Jesus made the thing impossible, not the boy's meal. And this is the uniqueness of this miracle, because this is the first miracle John shares with us where Jesus creates the impossible scenario. Jesus is the one turning this into an impossible situation. He is the one looking at the circumstance and saying, okay, guys, how are we going to feed everyone? Up until then, the solution was just send them home. We don't have to feed them. We already did our job. We ministered, we prayed, they're healed, send them home. But Jesus creates a scenario here. Remember, the first miracle, the wine ran out, so they came to Jesus. The second miracle, the son of the royal official was about to die, so he came to Jesus. The third miracle, the man had been paralyzed for 38 years. Jesus came and solved that problem. But here, Jesus is asking the question. Jesus is bringing the problem. Jesus is raising the stakes, and he's saying, how can we feed all these people? How can we feed all these people? And just by asking the question, immediately all the resources at hand became too small. Just by asking the question. Have you been there? In a circumstance, in a situation where the stakes are raised. Maybe you're just living life, doing your thing, and an idea comes to you. There's a problem to be solved. There's a need to be met. There's something that you can do, and immediately everything you have, all that you have thought, now becomes too small. Too small. And you may be thinking, why am I feeling this way? My wife and I have had a few seasons like that, and one very notorious season is leaving Texas to come to Connecticut to start a church, a movement. And our heart was never to start a church, and this is not diminishing the mission, but to start a church so that a few of us can come together. Our mission and our heart is that every family in Fairfield County, every household in Westchester County may be somehow touched and moved by this ministry. It's a big mission to be able to reach and affect households in our county. And when you're in a place like that where the impossible is presented to you, there's a tension that you feel in your heart. There's a feeling of inadequacy that happens. Why am I feeling this way? You might have asked yourself. Here's what happens. Along the rhythms of life, on your journey with God, in specific moments, God will place a goal and a challenge in your heart. And maybe you can't even kind of articulate that it's God. You might not be a church person here today, but you have an idea. You have a thought. You have a challenge, a goal. And that thing will change your perspective. It'll make you feel small. It'll make you feel inept, and it'll make you feel inadequate. Have you been there? In the moment, what was enough and okay becomes small and impossible. In the moment, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, which was a big meal for a small boy, becomes insignificant because now there's a crowd of thousands of people that need to be fed. Why does God do that? It sounds like he does it on purpose. What is Jesus' intention in presenting you with impossibilities? I have a few answers. The first thing I believe God is doing when he's doing that is he's trying to fulfill a need. There's a need in the world. There's a need in the community. There's a need around you. And God is trying to use it to meet a need. Look, the people were hungry. They were poor. They were a long way from home. It was possible that they couldn't even make it home without fainting. He was meeting their needs. And I got to tell you, often when God gives you an impossible vision, it's not about you. It's not about your life. It's not about your resources. It's not about you growing your net worth. He's trying to fulfill a need, whether it's a business, a product, a relationship, a mission. He's trying to use you to meet a need. You might not even be a church person, like I said here today, but you got to ask yourself this question. Where did this idea come from? Where do ideas come from? Are you that creative that you just came up with this idea of doing something impossible? See, our world frames our values to be about profit, status, and power. And we are encouraged to pursue and increase those markers in our lives. Those are the markers that the world uses. But when God gives you a vision, he will not use those markers. He will not abide by those markers. Just like he challenged his disciples that day, Jesus is challenging us. He uses circumstances to challenge us so that we may help others. And many times, we are in a position like the disciples, being called by God to do the impossible because he wants to use us to meet someone else's need. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, he said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be given to you as well. You're worried about what to wear. You're worried about shelter. You're worried about what to eat. You know what? If you seek first the plan of God for the world, he'll take care of you. So God is trying to meet a need. The second reason why Jesus presents us with impossibilities in moments in our lives is because he's trying to ignite your faith. It's the second thing. God is trying to enlarge your vision. It's an invitation to rely on him. He really is. You know, if everything you ever do in life is in the realm of possibility and it's within your reach, do you really need God? Do you really even need faith? See, the boy, that little boy, he could have kept quiet. He could have said, hey, this is my meal. I prepared. I don't know about all of these other people. I have my lunchbox, Spider-Man, and And I have my fish and chips here. I got my fish and I got my bread, and I'm going to eat. I don't know what's going to happen with you guys. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to eat. He could have hoarded his own meal. See, many times we fit in the scenario in life, we fit the description of the boy. Because we are compelled to act. Maybe we're not even that close to Jesus. Maybe we're in the tangential area of faith. But there's something driving us toward this impossibility. But you may look at your plate and all you have is 5 loaves and 2 fish. Metaphorically, all you have is a little bit of resource, a little bit of money, a little bit of relationship connection. You just have a little bit. Compared to the vision, compared to the impossibility, it's not even enough to make a scratch. Many times we feel small. In other words, there's no way that what I have in my hands can ever be enough for what I'm called to do. But here's the thing. The call is not for you to do the impossible. Jesus is not calling you to do the impossible. He's simply calling you to surrender your lunch. That's all he needs. Can you surrender your 2 fish and 5 loaves? Can you surrender what you have? Can you put it in the hands of the master, the creator, the one who's calling you? And just watch what he can do with it? Watch how he can lead you by faith, and he can do the impossible. The third thing that Jesus was doing and that he wants to do in our lives is to reveal himself. No, Paul writes that the God of this age, the spirit of this age, that means whatever is driving the world has blinded people to the existence and presence of God. And it's kind of like a religious picture, right? If you're not a church person, that can sound weird. But what happens is many times we can just go about life unaware of faith, unaware of this whole other world that exists. But we were built for it. Right? There's a part of us, a spiritual part of us, that longs for a relationship with God, that longs for God to reveal himself somewhere, somehow. And maybe you're here today, you're not sure if it's Christianity, you're not sure if it's Buddhism, you're not sure if it's just mindfulness, you're not sure if it's just meditation, positive thinking, you're just not sure, but there is a thirst and a desire in your heart to reach for God because you want God. You might not even call it God, but there's something in you that reaches beyond to the source of life. You want your life to be made whole again. And that's the whole reason why Jesus came. The whole reason why John wrote these miracles down is that we might believe that Jesus is the way. Now, there's a beautiful convergence happening here in this miracle. And it's a lesson for us. Jesus is challenging his disciples to meet a need. That's the first thing that's happening. And when the disciples open their hearts to see the need, there's a young boy who is challenged by faith to surrender his small meal. And when the small resource and the heart to meet a need are joined together, God is revealed to the people. And the people say, this is the prophet of God. It's an incredible picture. Jesus does the impossible. And my question to you today, I'm about to close. The worship team can come back up. Tim, if you can help me. No, the amazing thing about this passage is that if God is calling you to do the impossible today, and maybe you couldn't put words to it, and today your heart is connecting to this message. If God is calling you to do the impossible, do you have a vision, a challenge that makes you feel small? Maybe faith makes you feel inadequate. Maybe you feel like you're called to feed a multitude of people, so to speak, The metaphor fits. But all you have is 5 small loaves and 2 small fish. Challenge. It's an impossibility. I want to encourage you today. Do not be too quick to dismiss a vision that makes you feel small. Surrender to the smallness. Surrender to the smallness. You know what, God? Yes, I am too small. Yeah, I don't have enough. That's why I need you. The vision is big. The desire is big. The need is big. But that's why I need you. See, when God puts a seed in your heart, opens your heart to do something that's bigger than your capacity, bigger than what you can, what he's doing is he's trying to reveal himself to you. He wants you to be part of something bigger. He's inviting you to be part of his plan for the world. Friends, big things can come out of small offerings when we surrender to God the little we have. He can do amazing things. And some of you today, you're being called to solve a problem in our community. You feel it in your heart. You're being called to solve a problem. You feel like you don't have what it takes. Some of you are feeling the call to start a new project that'll help people grow and develop. But you feel like the vision is too big for you. Some of you are being called to break a family curse. You've been up against this thing and you feel like, my mom fought this, my dad fought this, my grandparents fought this, my great-grandparents fought this, and it's just my luck. I'm going to have to fight this too. But you're feeling on the inside, it shouldn't be this way. God is calling you to break this curse. And it may feel like it's too big for you. Friends, God's calling is often presented with an impossibility, an impossible proposition. I want to encourage you to have the faith to surrender your small lunch today. Have the faith to surrender it. And watch God use you to do the impossible in your life and to bless many, many people. Do you receive it this morning? Amen. Amen.